Well, today, as the title suggests, we have just one question from a football manager save. How on earth has Russell Martin survived? For those of you that are unaware, on my Twitch save that we'd started with Aberdeen a few months back, we've gone through 5 seasons and it's been, well, a bit of a side story in that save. What's happened at Celtic and what's happened with Russell Martin. We'll talk a little bit about how he got the job and what happened before and after he joined Celtic. But needless to say, it's left a lot of us asking a lot of questions. And today, we're going to take a bit of a deep dive and find out how on earth he's managed to keep his job. Hopefully, you're looking forward to that as much as me. But either way, it's going to be an interesting one. Yes, hello and welcome along to what has sort of become one of the biggest side story sagas we've ever had in an FM save. It always seems to involve Scottish clubs, but this one is among the most peculiar. To be honest, it actually ruined a save because we were having a great time with Aberdeen, but Scottish football became uncompetitive, and part of the reason for that is that Celtic had dropped off a cliff after Russell Martin had joined. Despite that, he's kept his job, and we're going to have a look at how, why, and what on earth is going on at Celtic, including taking charge of them to see if expectations have fallen, to see, as many of you predicted in the chat over the years, that perhaps there's financial issues, perhaps there's problems behind the scenes, because a lot of it just doesn't make sense. And we're going to try and get to the bottom of it, because a lot of people have talked in FM about player and manager performances and when sackings happen, whether or not there should be more, whether or not you can get away with underperforming more than usual. And this Celtic example would certainly suggest that you can. So let's find out if the answer is that or not. If you're looking forward to it, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. A slight departure from our usual style, but we'll be back with the firefighter next week. I've been promising to do this for a while and we need to get answers. So let me give you a bit of a background first, as we're on the SPL page. For those of you who have no idea what's going on and are wondering why, we've got 2 titles in a row with Aberdeen here, because this save started from the start of the game. 23-24 was our management stint at Aberdeen. We took charge of the club in normal circumstances, no special budgets, no special circumstances, just a bog standard out of the box game. And let's talk to you about what we did at Aberdeen so you can get an understanding of where Celtic are. So with Aberdeen, if we go back and have a look, we've just left in the 6th season. We've moved on to Victoria Pelsen. You'll see that again on Twitch whenever Virgin Media deliver an internet router. However, this is sort of what happened. We joined and we were expected to finish 3rd. Follow up from the season before, we managed to do that. We were competitive but didn't get through in the Europa Conference. We then finished 3rd the 2nd season as well. Now, in both of those, it is important to note that Celtic were managed for the full season by Brendan Rodgers. So if we go back and have a look at the seasons to compare them here, so if we go to 23-24 and 24-25, Celtic won the league with 94 points in the first season, miles clear of Rangers and even further clear of us. And in the 2nd season, Celtic won the league with 90 points, miles clear of Rangers and a little bit further clear than us. But as you can see, Celtic were the dominant force in the nation. Now, the following season is where it starts to get a bit sketchy, because as you saw from the Aberdeen graphics, Aberdeen finished 2nd in season 3. Now, the reason for that is Celtic, because Rangers jumped up a spot. They managed to win the league, but wasn't that much more convincing because they were in the 80s, as were we. But note this, Kilmarnock finished 3rd, Celtic finished 4th. Now, what happened here was pretty interesting, because Celtic, after winning the title successively with brilliant starts, sacked Brendan Rodgers after a poor start to season 3. Now, no issue with that. That's sort of what we expected. They were floating around 4th, and if we go back to the schedule for that year, for 25-26, you can see they finished okay, but they had a horrible time around September, October. They were losing silly games. They lost away at Hearts. They lost away at Dundee. They lost at home to Motherwell. Dropped points against us and Rangers, which maybe wasn't a disaster, but then also lost at Kilmarnock and St Johnstone. So as a result of that, Brendan Rodgers was sacked on the 27th of November 2025. The club at the time were in 4th place in the SPL and they were struggling. There was no doubt in that. They'd done well, they had back-to-back titles and they were doing well in the Cups and in Europe. But Brendan Rodgers, if you're Celtic and you're 4th at the end of November, you're probably getting sacked if there's not games in hand. There is absolutely no doubt in that. As you can see, he won the Scottish Cup both seasons. He won the League Cup the first season before we got a grip on it with Aberdeen. He did brilliantly. He did what you would expect from Celtic. Now, the reason you would expect that he's sacked at this point, and that we completely understand it, is because Celtic expect, at a minimum, we should be in the top two. So if we're not in the top two, which we weren't there with Brendan Rodgers, despite the fact he's won the title the 2 years before, we're going to sack him and get rid of him as quick as possible. Again, no issue with that. Russell Martin comes in, and let's be honest, it was a pretty stuttering finish to the season. He started well in December, he got a bit of a bounce, despite a 0-0 draw at Greenock Morton, who had been atrocious that year. But otherwise, there weren't many defeats. In fact, I think only St Mirren and Rangers away. A lot of draws, a few too many, and not really scoring bundles of goals, but they were good and they were defensively improving. And in the end, they only just missed out on third, which you could say, fair enough. Job done. We'll give him the summer and see if he can move on and get us back up there. Then we come back to the following season. So let's go and have a look at what was happening at Aberdeen, because in season 4 and 5, you can see Aberdeen won the title. Now, that's not really a big disaster because we'd pushed on and built a side that I've never managed to do in Scotland before. We'd sold brilliant talent. We got massive money for Miofsky, for Duke and for Connor Barron, and we managed to build a top team. However, what happened when it came to the title was a little bit more alarming, because if we go back to season 4, having seen Celtic finish 4th in season 3, Celtic finished 3rd. Now, you could argue they were a little bit tighter. They only finished 6 points off the top, and Rangers were 2 points off the top, and we nicked it on the penultimate day, I think it was. So they made progress, but they still finished 3rd, which for most Celtic teams would be considered a pretty embarrassing in the SPL. Now, we'll get to the transfers and the situation there, but my question was, given the fact that Russell Martin had had, well, a pretty sharp appointment after Brendan Rodgers dropped off, you would have expected that Celtic would have thought they'd be straight back up there, and that would be the expectation from the board, because why would you sack manager who's won the league back-to-back after a slow start if you're then going to allow a slow year and a half? Now, I know it looks good that Celtic were only 6 points away, but they did finish pretty strong. There were stages earlier in the season where they were pretty dismal. They finished with a flourish at the end, which allowed them to catch up on their rivals at the top. But near the start of the season, again, it was a little bit ropey. Again, that September phase when Europe came in, and October they obviously lost to Rangers. Before over Christmas it fell apart with defeats against Rangers, draw with Hearts, defeat against Kilmarnock. So, not the best spell for them. Not winning other cups, which they were under Brendan Rodgers. The winning of the Scottish Cup, the Viaplay Cup, that seemed to just dry up completely. So Russell Martin has left this side in a place that is significantly inferior to Brendan Rodgers. Now, in season 5, I kind of get why he's been saved. But if we go and have a look at the title race again, obviously you know that we won it with Aberdeen. But then it becomes a bit more questionable because we managed to get 97 points. We only lost one game all season. We were terrific. Rangers still kept second place, albeit with a dwindling 77 points, and Philip Clement would probably be under pressure if it wasn't for this saga. However, Celtic finished 3rd again on 73 points, going backwards point-wise, not far clear of Kilmarnock, and it took till pretty late in the season for them to do so. And if we have a look at season 5 again, they were saved by one thing at the end, which was a Europa Conference League final. We watched it on camera. It ended up being a bonkers game. But again, didn't win trophies, didn't manage to compete at the top end at any point. And while Rangers were in a bit of a title race and dropped off, Celtic were just nowhere. Even back as far as October, they were trounced at home by Hibs. They then drew against Rangers, Hearts and St Johnstone back-to-back, as well as Farrell in the Conference League. Then lost to Dundee the first game of November. Any spell like this in real life and the manager would be gone. But what I really don't understand is how this was okay, but Brendan Rodgers got sacked after one slow start in November. Now, you go to this position here after those results. That was one SPL win in about 8 games against the bottom team. And after that, Brendan Rodgers had been sacked in season 3. Russell Martin, not a blink of an eye. He then went on in December to lose the League Cup final to us, to lose against St Mirren, to draw against Hibernian. They were 4th at that stage after that Hibernian draw. And again, nothing. It really confused me, I have to be honest. And while a Europa Conference League final, yes, is a chance to save your bacon, they lost it. They weren't brilliant towards the end of the year. And they kept losing the Glasgow derbies as well, 2 in a row against Rangers in April. Doesn't make sense to me. So What it left us asking, and what it left a lot of us wondering in the chat, is what is Russell Martin doing? Because he's getting trounced by his two main rivals at the top. Celtic aren't finishing in or really competing for the top two. And in one year, they actually finished fourth. Why on earth is he still in a job when Brendan Rodgers got sacked so quickly for underachieving after back-to-back titles? Now, the main thing that got suggested in the comment section was finances, because obviously after his first half season, they missed out on the Champions League and the Europa League. They're in the lower competitions. Is the revenue dropping? Are they running out of money? Well, maybe not, because if we go and have a look at their wage bill, it is still the highest in the SPL. They are still offering players big contracts on big money. So Mamadou Sonko is one of their more recent signings. He was signed last January for £26 million and put on 88 grand a week. To put that in perspective, that's about 5 times what our top player was earning at Aberdeen and about 3 times the top earner at Rangers for the most part of this save. You then add in the fact that they've brought in the likes of Kasper Dolberg on 80 grand a week, Victor Nelson on 70, Esposito 55. There is no doubt that they've been spending money. They've also had players like the first signing that Russell Martin brought in that third season, January, was Leon Goretzka. Didn't improve the team at all. So if we go and have a look at their transfer history, yes, the last couple of years we've started to see big deficits because they're having to sell players due to not making the top European competitions, not getting the extra prize money from leagues and cups. If we go back and look at the first 2 years, they were obviously fine. They won the title. Third season, they still spent in the positive. And if you have a look at that January, when Russell Martin had joined the club, they didn't sell anyone of note. Kyogo went the summer before, but in that January, they sold nobody. They signed Leon Goretzka for 15 million from Bayern Munich. He's since moved on, of course. And they also signed another player from Bayern, a young goalkeeper who's now developed a bit. So very interesting that you could come in, add Leon Goretzka to your team and not make yourself stronger despite not losing anyone. Then the following season, they did sell big money, but if you look at the biggest sales, they both came in January. So actually the first half of the season, they were pretty much level on the balance books. They did sign Kasper Dolberg that January. They signed a number of very good players and added some quality loans like Matthew Targett. Again, no real progress. And if you look at the ones that had been sold, so say an Archie Brown, it's someone they'd signed the year before. It's not like they were selling players that were in the first team squad. Nicholas Kuhn had been loaned out the year before. Probably Carter Vickers was the only big one they lost from their 11. The following season, season 5, again, a big deficit in the end, but that was actually a sale at the end of the season that added 20 million on. So other than that, again, pretty even. And they're bringing in good players. Sonko we mentioned for 21 million. Sorry, it was the summer deadline, not January. He was there the whole of last season. And they brought in a couple of others as well, including loans such as Ramazani. And it just makes me question how on earth they've got themselves in this much of a mess. This season, they're now having to balance the books because they failed drastically and they're starting to let a few people go. But again, despite the fact we're not even in Scotland now, and Aberdeen have weakened a bit since we left, they're 9 points off Rangers at the top and still significantly behind Aberdeen too, with Kilmarnock closing in on them. So it just leaves a few too many questions, and the only way I think I can find out the answer is to go and join Celtic and see how their expectations have changed, because if Brendan Rodgers can get sacked after winning the league 3 months in for being poor, how can Russell Martin then not even break the top 2 over 2.5 seasons, not win a trophy, I don't think. I will double check that, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. Let me double check it. Scottish Cup, no, 25 was the last one, not even been in a final. League Cup, no, got to one final and that was it. How can he get to that position and still keep his job? Now, the big question here is not just about keeping his job also. He's not even been insecure at any stage because we have been looking. We've been keeping an eye on it. Russell Martin's job has not been insecure. He's been offered one new contract since he joined the club. He initially joined in 2025 on a 3.5-year deal. And since then, he's had it extended by 2 years and his wages increased as well. Someone needs to explain this to me. So let's go into Celtic as a new manager. We're going to try and match up the reputation stuff. So we'll be an international footballer. We're going to have the licenses. And we're just going to see what our expectation is with that level of reputation. So let's go ahead and join Celtic and see if we can find out our answer. Well, this has perhaps got even more interesting now, because if we go and have a look at the predictions when we go to join the club, Celtic are predicted second above their rivals Rangers. Now, If that's replicated by the board and they expect to be above Rangers, there is no reason that Russell Martin should be in a job. They also solved the financial problem straight away. They're rich despite the fact that they've not been in the Champions League for years. They've not been in the top two of the league or winning trophies. I'm guessing that was both the run to the Conference League final and selling talent, and perhaps some very good sponsors from the first two seasons that are still going on. We'll take a little look at that in a moment. Rangers in a less good financial position, in a less prominent position according to the media, and Aberdeen top of the lot, should be doing really well, and they've got a lot of board culture items from our time in charge. But Celtic, again, it's just signed players under 23, which we haven't seen a lot of. They are the side that are expected to be second, which makes this all the more confusing. I should mention here we've got lots of leagues loaded as well. A few suggested that that might be a factor because a lot of the other saves we've done, we've had less leagues. Maybe there's more manager movement. But let's just go and get ahead to this and see what happens. We're going to pick the coaching badge of the pro license. We're going to be an international manager, but probably, an international player, but probably continental level because we're not as big as Russell Martin was. And we're just going to leave it at that. We'll see what it's like. It doesn't matter for now. How are we going to compare and how are the expectations going to be? Because if it's anything above third, it's going to leave me so confused. It's unbelievable. 60,000 seater. The club is rich. Look at the transfer budget. It's a big transfer budget. It's a big wage budget. They've still got money in the bank. So those of you who were saying in the streams that it must be finances, you couldn't be more wrong. It's not financial, but then that leaves us running out of options. The plan for this season, challenge for the Cinch Premiership title. So they're expecting to challenge for the title, but they were 25 points off last year. They were fourth the year before that. I'm so confused. How is Russell Martin surviving this? I thought we'd come in here and maybe just see that the expectations had reduced or there would be financial pressures, but there's not. There's nothing that makes it make sense. Their expectation for next season is to win the Premiership. So by the end of the 2030 season, they want it won. I've got a feeling this is going to need a part two with some holidaying because this is turning into a proper saga. Supporter expectation, requirement to finish above Rangers in the league, something Russell Martin has not done once in his 3 times in charge. Maintain the club status as the most reputable in Scotland, we can't say that for long, and qualify for the Champions League, which they haven't done for the last 3 seasons under Russell Martin. What on earth is happening here? I really can't work this out. We've got to accept challenging for the title, so there isn't anything else there. I really want to try and find out what's going on here. If we have a look at the finances, they're in great shape. I mean, I don't know where the money's come from, but it is absolutely raking in. Where has the money come? Players sold has added 60 million, which is the bank balance. So in fairness, that probably is it. But the gate receipts are still massive. The season tickets, the sponsorship deals are brilliant. And the prize money from the Conference League last year has definitely made an impact. You can see that for sure. And obviously they're bringing in Europa League money this year, which helps. But that was 11 million. So that probably did put a dent in it. The wages are huge and the balance has been going up consistently. So actually, if we go to when Russell Martin took charge here, bar 1 month during the summer this year, he has had a higher budget than Brendan Rodgers had at any point. So this makes it even worse. He's come in, he's been given a bigger transfer budget, a bigger wage budget, and he's won nothing. He's not finished in the top 2, and he's keeping his job, despite the fact it's required to finish above Rangers and challenge for the title. Is anyone spotting something here that I'm not? Because I just can't work it out. I have no idea how he has kept his job, and there isn't an answer. They've got a very good team. They should be up and competing in the top 2. They've probably got a better side than Rangers on paper in this save. And yet they continue to finish behind them. If we have a look at this season again, look, they've just drawn with Ross County. They've drawn with Aberdeen, which is fine. I mean, they've had an okay start, but then look at the start of the season. Yes, they lost to Aberdeen, but then drew with Hibs, lost to Kilmarnock, drew with Motherwell. They're out of the League Cup as well. They lost to Motherwell in that. So they're not going to win a trophy again. I've genuinely never been so confused. I really thought we were going to get answers here, but I think we've probably got more questions than we've ever had. I think we need to do a little part 2 of this. I can't promise when it'll be, somewhere over Christmas, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to holiday from this point a couple of years just to see whether Russell Martin challenges for the title, wins it the following year, or gets the chop if he doesn't. Because it's very clear from the Celtic board, with us taking charge, that they expect to challenge for the title, challenge for the cup, and win the Cinch Premiership next year. So that gives Russell Martin 18 more months. His contract ends then, the same point that we've been given one, and they're expected to be champions. So what happens if he doesn't do it? How is he keeping a job that Brendan Rodgers was sacked as soon as he wasn't the best team in Scotland? But Russell Martin's allowed to be third, carrying a bigger wage budget and carrying significant underachievement, where they're actually in a battle for third with Kilmarnock rather than a title race with Rangers and Aberdeen most of the time. It leaves a lot of scenarios that I can't quite understand or work out. What I'd love to know in the comments, if you've seen any side stories in your saves that are similar to this. Obviously, it became more prominent because it was in live streams. We were talking about it a lot. But have you had any saves where you've seen manager changes that don't make sense, but then more importantly, someone keeping a job that just seems so surprising given their performance and the fact that clearly Russell Martin is underachieving on Celtic's expectations? They wouldn't be different for him than they are to me, albeit my reputation's not as big there. I'm an international. I've got the pro license. It doesn't make sense. Let me know down in the comments if you've seen anything similar. Let me know if you have an alternative answer, if there's somewhere I haven't looked that will unlock the door to working out how Russell Martin kept his job. This is nothing personal, by the way. This is purely a weird scenario that we found in FM. So hopefully you enjoyed a little different look today. If you did, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. Subscribe to stay up to date with the channel. Back to normal with the Firefighter next Sunday. Now we're moved and settled in. Hopefully you'll come and join me for that. If you missed any of the series so far, or our big ones from FM24, you can find them up in the eye above. And as soon as we've got internet installed, we'll be back live on Twitch. Hopefully I'll see you soon for that one too. Thank you very much for watching and for giving this one a try. Hopefully you guys can answer the question in the comments. I'll see you again next week as we return back to normal service with the Firefighter.